Yeah, so it's been a bit more than 2 years that we've done Elm at Veepee. We would like to talk about a bit about it. But first, let's say what the company does. So it's a company that sells clearance stock, and we do it during flash sales for our members. So this is the business.
So let's start with the people. We have like very different people. We are pretty much like 400 developers, and as he said, we are a little more than 15 Elm developer. And we have all the projects that started doing Elm. No one of the developer had a previous experience in Elm, so it was for all of us the first time. And some of these developers had big interest in functional programming in general, like Haskell, F# or whatever, but not professional experience. So it wasn't something that was needed. Oops. And from the industry experience that we had, I mean, the people we are talking about, we have junior developer, we have very experienced, we have like people that change it from other role to developer. So all of them are today people that are happy with their Elm experience. And we also have some passionate people that help to make the other team grow. And this is what was important, I think, in a company like ours, to spread Elm all over the company.
Yeah, so I like to think that the birth of Elm at Veepee has been accompanied by two fairy godmothers. So the first one, the plushie, is actually, we started doing Elm during a hackathon. So there was that project which was called Veepee Bullet, which was which was used to report mistakes we make and make it anonymously and spread the awareness. And so this project hit the production, and yeah, it was the basis for the start of Elm at Veepee, and it was really great because from there on we didn't have to justify ourselves. Having Elm in production was a foregone conclusion, and it was much easier to tell people, yes, we're going to do it in Elm. The problem, of course, is that when you put proofs of concept in production, sometimes you have problems. So in my current project, we also had a project that started from experiments, and yeah, we still have some parts of the code that we would like to change, so we refactor it bit to bit, but it's an ongoing process. So the second and much more important theory to me is something that started completely separately from this process. Actually, it started from Theo right here. And so Theo has been running for as long as he's been at Veepee and as long as I can remember a dojo. He's been attracting people from outside of the developer community. So, for instance, there are people from support which are using Elm. There are people from support which has, I believe they are developing a tool for themselves now, right? And it's also been a great boost in confidence for developers that were not confident starting Elm on their work, but would be interested in the dojo, would be interested in trying out the language during the dojo. That's what helped them say, yeah, okay, I'm ready to start using it in production. Mm-hmm. It was also a way to identify people that were willing to help and that were going to mentor people into production. And yeah, so the most important part, like in every community activity, it's persistence. And Theo has been doing it every Friday from as long as I can remember. So thanks, Theo.
Kudos.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about the dojo, the ways you can start dojo, because Theo experimented lots of formats for the dojo, just ask this person, right? Go to him, talk to him, he's the expert. Yeah. So it's also be a great learning tool. In my team, we have some Haskell in production too. This is our backend, and Haskell is a simple language, in my opinion. But it's not an easy language. It has many new concepts to learn, and Elm has less new concepts to learn. And so the idea is that you can start doing Elm, learn some of the concepts, and then if you switch to Haskell, you only have some of the concepts that are new, right? You don't learn all of Haskell at once. This is a great help in getting to start on something more complicated. So the idea is it's like a terrace garden. You know, you only have to do one step at once. You only have to learn one part, one thing new at each move. Yeah, we've also been doing some pairing, which also helps a lot to learn and to move from one garden to the other.
So to wrap up this Elm Veepee, what I call love story, I don't think we can say exactly which part like helped to this contagion, because now like we feel more and more people are happy to learn more about Elm. So from a hackathon, from the first team that had the production and other team that get support from this team, and you know, with these sponsors, that they help the new teams to build Elm quickly and get, you know, hit the production fast. And this weekly dojo also helps like people to, you know, to have a safe space to experiment, to learn, and run it like in a way it's weekly. I think give it some, you know, structure to the learning for a lot of people who didn't know Elm at all, or were JavaScript developer or not even developer at all.
Yeah, so let's talk about the products, the use case for the product.
Yeah. So we have identified like two kind of teams today. So we have teams that they do full-time Elm, and every web app. We have teams, mine and Benoi team. Every web app will start, it will be an Elm. There is no doubt on our mind today. So all the team is, you know, behind this choice. And we have other team. They have a lot of React components, where they have a lot of React code, and they started experimenting some smaller part or simple part using Elm. So we have these two kind of teams. And I would say there is 25, 30 maybe people who do some Elm time to time to full-time Elm.
Yeah, so this is my application. So I will just introduce the business in order to explain you what happens in terms of features. So these are our campaigns, and this application is used to manage campaigns. So we need to check that campaigns are well split. So for instance, we don't sell all of the shoes the same day. And we also need to make actions to account for changes in schedule. For instance, if we don't receive samples, we need to move the campaign later on so that we can take the pictures, right? So we can drag and drop campaigns. We can also reschedule campaigns using the action menu. There is a lot of different views up there and filters. Right there. So yeah, there's a lot of different features, but it's not very, it's not necessarily very complicated in terms of Elm. The main preoccupations we have is really our legacy system was hard to edit and it was slow. Right now what we need is we need to have a way to understand whatever happened because it's important. And we also need to be able to develop new features easily and without slowing the application.
The other use case is in a different product, where we had a complex data structure, and we wanted to reduce the risk of the evolution of this data structure. So the tool I would be talking about. It's a tool that qualifies the catalog of Veepee. And just to give you an example, we have product from a camera to a shirt to a shoe or a watch. So we have very, very different taxonomy. So this gives a little complicated data structure. And today, Elm helped us a lot to have custom types and all this kindness. And today, I can even imagine having a language without this feature. So as we see here, we didn't have a lot of design experience, but we're trying to get better at it. So we have other web apps that we are starting to work with our designer and add more UX and stuff like that. And one of the experiments that we would like to continue and do more seriously is having an Elm design system. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it because you will learn more about it with Theo tomorrow. So again, Theo.
So let's start to talk about the practice of Elm.
Yes. So in the business unit where I was, all the web app were in Redux, React Redux. And honestly, I mean, I took this from a guy who said that in Slack, and it was totally my experience. So I didn't want to start doing React, Redux, Saga, probably Lambda, maybe more type with Flow, or maybe not with TypeScript. So I didn't want to have all drama around. I'm not saying it's bad stack. Some people are happy with it. It's just was more comfortable to because I knew a little bit Elm and typed FE, and I wanted to start with this. So we'll introduce another principle that I like about Elm. I like to think about when you start a new language or when you learn a new language, it's good, it affects the way you think about programming. And if it's not, I don't think it's worth, I mean, if you know JS or Ruby or whatever, so it's repetitive, like you have the same concept. What I like about Elm, it's pushing the keep it simple philosophy to this edge, and I have been learning a lot from that, because sometimes there is some tedious code to write with Elm, and you have to fight yourself to not think about like adding more complexity or other feature. And I love that about Elm, that it's the philosophy is written on the way we write our application and with the way we think, and trying to keep it all as simple as possible. And sometimes an operator that requires more line of code is actually simpler because it reduces cognitive load. I have been experiencing this with Elm, and it affected a lot, I think, my way of thinking about programming. So I think this is one of the take. Now I'm experienced. Just to give you an example, it had been 5 or 6 months of Elm in production for me. It have been more for Benoi. So I'm still learning, and this discipline that Elm given me and the design start to make more sense, and the coherent principle it have.
Yeah, I would like to talk about something that I like to call feature-based structure. So I will. Let's go till there. So the idea is that in our code, what is interesting to us is the features in our code. So if someone gets into our code base and wants to know how to reschedule a campaign, for instance, or has seen a bug in the search and wants to correct it, it's very annoying if the search feature is shared across different update functions, right? So the idea is that we want to split our code in terms of features. So for instance, search will have its own update function and its own part of the model. this is the features, right? And when we started, we had views. All of our code was split into components, and it was really not working for us because we could not think in terms of features. So one example, for instance, is the schedule. As I said earlier, you can reschedule by drag and dropping, by getting into a menu, or by drag and dropping in a second way. And that means if you do it in terms of components, these will be different components. And so it was really painful to have scheduling done in different places, right? So right now, what we prefer to do is having views completely split and having their own partition logic. For instance, we have a folder with all of our model views. And there is, for instance, there is one model which is used for the help menu, and another is used for the rescheduling. So it's not related in terms of feature because it's in the view. And on the other hand, in the update and in the model, we split the code in terms of feature because it's easier for us to find what we want to correct. It's not an idea that is always shared. So yeah, this is just my personal point. I had to edit. Let's talk about backends a bit. So my team is using Haskell as a backend. The nice parts about Haskell, the first one is that Haskell has some libraries which help us generating a lot of stuff for Elm. So we don't do encoders and decoders. We don't create our own API methods. So we have an API file which is generated. And this file guarantees that the backend and the front end, which are built at the same time, they are always synchronized. So we will never have a backend which is not able to speak with the front end, right? And this is a great benefit for us. It's also nice to use Haskell on Elm because the syntax is pretty similar. A lot of concepts are pretty similar. There are differences. But overall, it's easy to move from some Elm into some Haskell and the other way too. It would be much different, for instance, if we had a Java backend, because then making the switch would be harder for us every time we switch. There is a small drawback, which is when we moved to 19, when we're still doing the move. So we are moving from 18 to 19, and we are having trouble getting a new bridge because the ecosystem is very fragmented in the libraries that connect Elm to Haskell.
Another backend story. So, our backend story is very different. We started with a Node.js server, and it was like a very thin layer. We were calling other products, well, other API to get article and other stuff. And when the app started growing, the complexity grew as well, and we needed to have more types. I mean, we had that in the front end, so why not in the back end? So at first we introduced GraphQL, and then we introduced Elm GraphQL. So we didn't have to write any more encoder decoder, which was awesome for us. And we also had the type verification, the compilation time. And another story is we also introduced our experience in Elm helped us to introduce F#, which is another ML language. The similarity with Elm helped a lot. So just to give you the story, the person who started doing a little POC started in Elm, and when we saw the code, to translate this code from Elm to F# is really fairly easy. So there is like little difference of the syntax, but this helped us also to have more functional programming on our team. Thank you for GraphQL, by the way.
Yeah, let's go quickly around the problems we had with the language. So, very quickly. So, in terms of performance, we had a few problems of performance. Our solution has been to put lazy everywhere. It worked for us. So, I don't have a good story about why not to use it. But yeah, it helped a lot. We also had a few problems that were not related to interacting with the DOM, and the lesson is if you see that the GC is getting bad overloads, usually it means it comes from your algorithms and from your Elm code, and not from your interaction with the DOM. And yeah, when I started debugging and profiling Elm, it was a bit hard to look into the code because there's a lot of A1s, A2s, and F1s, F2s, etc. Yeah, if you're interested in debugging Elm as opposed to profile Elm as opposed to profiling JavaScript, don't pay attention to this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this common difficulty to identify which 18 or 19 version. So I think we had to help the novice or the people starting to how to identify quickly which tutorial or package to use for our cases. Yeah. So the approach, I mean, when you start, there is a lot of components that we had, or React, like infinite scroll, or for example, filterable tab. So it's hard to, when you don't have this, and you have to start a new project, and you have to build them.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some messages that we are not really interested in too in terms of business, which we have to have. For instance, if you open a drop-down or if you scroll through a menu, there's a lot of messages that are not really relevant to your to what you're actually trying to do. There's also, the time travel debugger is also quite limited in terms of if you work on large data sets. It goes down very quickly, so if you work in dev with it, you should learn to put it down. There is a possibility to use build systems in order to work around this, but having a real first-class package manager that helps us having internal packages would really help, and would help share internal stuff.
So I have this little story. So when you start with a new language that maybe, not that known, especially from the manager and some people who decide. So they will ask you, what about recruitment? It will going to be hard. There is not a lot of Elm developer and stuff. So I had this discussion with my manager, and it went this way: are you sure that we will be able to find Elm developers? And my answer to him were you able to recruit easily experienced React developers? Which, we struggle to recruit. So manager didn't have anything to say about it. And in my point of view, I think today's market, there is more people willing to change job for functional programming than functional programming jobs. And I really, really think it's a competitive advantage, actually, and especially for a big company that struggles to recruit a lot of developers. So I think it's a real argument. And the manager answer was, yeah. And by the way, we recruit, so if you want to talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have questions?
Thanks.
There is a little lag here.
So did you find any solution for sharing packages, or how do you deal with it?
There is, I believe it's DMY, which published a solution that, or maybe someone else, which published a solution to build from GitHub or from Git repos. But it's not very. My point, it's possible, but it's not very easy to find the information if you're not in the Slack.
Yeah, when you mention among the problems the overload of messages that are unrelated, yes. What was the problem? Or it wasn't clear to me what you meant.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Yeah,
about the message.
in one of the slides you mentioned that one of the problems you found was overload of messages that seem unrelated to the business. What was the problem?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if I come back to my application, suddenly it's not such a good idea to. So yeah, it's right here. So for instance, if I click on this wheel right here, it will open a menu, right? But it will do no meaningful action in terms of what the planner, the user, wants to do, right? So it's not a business movement which is done, right? Likewise, if you want to open the sectors menu, it's just a UI action, right? It's not interesting to me in terms of the business. There's a lot of this kind of messages that we would just like to put aside and not see when we look at the business logic.
Okay, so the problem was readability when trying to understand the code that has those messages, right?
Sorry, I did not. I'm.
Yeah, the problem then was readability of the code or trying to understand the code with unrelated messages, right? Or what was the problem?
So did you? Sorry, I'm.
Yeah. So it's as you said, is the problem the fact that it's hard to read? No.
Is a problem to understand what the code is doing because of the unrelated messages, or is it a different problem?
These messages they clutter the update function without meaningful information.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll have one last question.
Thank you guys for sharing your success story. It looks really amazing. The question is, do you find that writing an encoder or decoder is painful or what? Because you mentioned that, oh yeah, we will never write decoders and encoders anymore. To me, decoder and encoders looks more like good option of the Elm, and I'm wondering why you are so happy to don't write them. Thank you.
What I feel is, I mean, it's sometimes a little tedious to write, so I'm happy if I can get them generated. So it's, I mean, we have been doing it and other, like we have web app that using GraphQL and all that don't use it. So we struggle a little bit sometimes to write some of them when the model is a little complicated. But I mean, as I said, I kind of also prefer that the simplicity to, you know, not have like magic things or whatever. So
there's this, and there's, even if you like it, even if you enjoy writing decoders, which is fine. I mean, it's always interesting when you're not forced to do it, right? The problem is it's not something that brings value to our users. So we just want to transfer the data. We are not interested in how.
So actually, I have one question. Mm-hmm. So how does it feel to be 15 people doing Elm together? So, and how do you collaborate on things first, and then how do you feel compared to other people doing other technologies inside the Veepee, and are you able to transfer that motivation to them? So that's 3 questions.
Okay. So for the second question, very smug. It's hard to not be smug when we think about it. We've done it. We can do functional programming and be paid for it, and it feels so good.
Okay.
That's true. So the first, I mean, we even used, you know, to onboard newcomers, right in Elm, to participate in other teams that they already have code bases and Elm. So we have merge requests like from a team to another one. So I mean, it worked well in our flow. I mean, code review and all that stuff. So we're trying to to teach newcomers, to spread knowledge. And we have other people that they want to learn Elm and started doing it at the dojo. We have...
You're doing a dojo here.
Yeah, there is this dojo. And someone at some point just came in the room where the dojo were, and he was just eating, so he didn't pay attention what they were doing. He's a React developer, and at some point he was hearing things that that makes sense for me, and he started paying more and more attention, and after that started asking questions. And today he spent like maybe half a day a week learning Elm, and so we think that there is a new team that will start also doing Elm. Yeah. And actually this week he did an interview, so they decided in a retrospective to ask us what is our feedback about Elm.
Yes. Just to answer your first question, we are not 15 on one project.
I know.
So there is no one 15 people team. One thing is true though, it's these different teams have some kind of are more bonded together than other teams because we shared the experiment of trying out Elm, and this was a bonding experiment across teams.
So the takeaway I would get would be that if I want to introduce Elm inside a big company, I should do dojos.
It's a good first way, actually.
Yeah, and find a field to experiment without, especially if you didn't have any Elm application in production before, you might be afraid or something. So find a hackathon or whatever initiative you can start with, and find all the people that want to do it.
So internal events. Okay, thank you very much.